Hey y'all, it's Wednesday. It's me, Marissa Alexander. Y'all, we're gonna have to talk about cancel culture tonight. I've been wanting to talk about this topic for some time. I've had many conversations with people. I believe that people genuinely have some feelings towards cancel culture, also synonymous with call out culture. So we don't talk a little bit about it because I think in just really exploring the topic that I found that what I believe is there's an imbalance. And what I mean by that is like it's too much of a good thing cannot be a good thing. And at one point it might have served a purpose, but we went way to the left on it. And so we're kind of in this thing right now where it's just I don't know. I think it's evolved into something that maybe that wasn't the intended point when it was something that was a thing. And so I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into that tonight because I mean, hey, it is what it is. It's out there. So we've heard, we probably have heard or seen somebody be a victim of cancer culture. So that's what we're gonna talk about. I really want to hear what you got to say, because it's easy to not be the subject of cancel culture. So let me just basically state what it is. So culture, like I told you earlier, also known as call out culture, is the removal, canceling of support or the work due to an opinion or an action deemed objectionable by the parties that are being called out. So something that was done or said was offensive in some way, or perhaps maybe this individual had been doing behaviors that had been obviously inappropriate, wrong, some of it even criminal. And so we got to a point where when nothing wasn't being done, maybe that they got called out. Or people just didn't like something they did. They were just, like I don't like that. And so we have seen at least, I want to say, we've really kind of seen it in the last maybe 4 to 8 years, this cancel culture thing kind of become a thing where people are actually like writing about it. So y'all tell me let me ask you this. How do you even feel about cancel culture? Because I think when I first started, I was like, I ain't kind of with all of that. As I evolved, like I said, I'm kind of neutral at this point, and I'm gonna tell you why. So typically what happens is the individual is basically called out, and then, social media in its, I don't know, broadness these days goes along. At this point, it creates this buzz that goes on to make sure this person is called out and completely canceled, right? And I don't know that the intention of the calling out started out as canceling people. And in some cases, it has got the outcome that needed to take place prior to the calling out or canceling even, happen. So that's basically, in a nutshell, cancel culture. And I think one of the ones that I remember the most about cancel culture, in my opinion, was two incidents. One was Chrisette Michelle. I I honestly got a special place in my heart for this sister, because I just don't think she's been able to recover. And I personally I think that was an instance where it went way too far. And I believe that she has spoken on the topic and, tried to kind of like redeem herself, if you will. And I think she should have a space to do it. But, you know, it just does not happen for her. And I believe, in my opinion, that women tend to kind of get a heavier hand with the cancel culture. And it depends on, like, if it's a man that is canceled, usually he has performed, not all the time, but usually has engaged in activity long before, and no rectifying or change or accountability took place. So that's just my initial thoughts. Let me hear what y'all got to say. Hey, what's going on, Marcus? Thanks for coming again. So, yeah, tell me about cancel culture. Let me know what your thoughts on it. So I'm gonna go over a few things. So we've seen where there's several types of canceling that takes place. So you have organizations that will distance themselves from an individual who is being called out, therefore canceled. So they're no longer speaking at events. They're distancing themselves on that. So, like, if they were speaking at an event, they decided to pull them from it. Also, any appearances where they might have, going to show up for some reason that they probably cancel. Another way is basically the pressure, the business aspect of it. So we've seen when that canceling culture takes place for an individual that's called out, then from the business standpoint, brands and sponsors this is, basically distance themselves and a lot of times pulls a lot of their endorsements. And of course, that affects people's livelihoods. So there's also another thing that takes place, and we're going to get into that. And it's gonna be kind of me just giving information because like I said, I evolved, I thought about it, and I think there are good points to think about when we start thinking about canceling. For one, I don't know if you've ever been canceled, and I don't know that we've ever really had the opportunity to go on. Like, I would love to do a show called Cancel Culture and get people who have been canceled and actually talk to them. I am a sucker for good conversation because I'm not looking at just the what, I want to know the why. Like, what was you thinking? What was you going through? Anyway, that's just me. So, to be honest with you, cancel culture isn't new. And historically, we think about it, we think like the Scarlet Letter, which that has a whole lot of other elements of, subjugation and suppression and things in it. But just to give an example, I'm even thinking all the way back into the medieval days, off with your head, pulling people in these public arenas and people being excited about people, again, being mutilated or hurt or harmed or killed, So this cancel culture thing has evolved. We just got like technological advancement. So what that has done has given the social media the ability to boost it at like warp speed in no time, like all over, right? So prior to technological advancement, you could have had like an isolated, incident, but now that we have, social media, the scope and the impact is so far wide, and it's swift. So again, there we go. We have it. A lot of people obviously have some issues with it because in some cases it's affected people who are not necessarily, the story didn't get out right, or it was too layered and nuanced and didn't give the proper context, and therefore you have some inaccuracies in what was reported, and boom, that's gone. Then you have people who had issues with, with freedom of speech, which is that's a fine line, that one, because some people just want to be, or have the space to go into places and be offensive and ignorant, and we tend to know that they do so with inflammatory bravado. And so with that said, then, people started holding people accountable because it was one of those things where they were getting out of control. Again, balance. So here's a pro. Let's see here. Marcus, what's up? Well, Mr. Walls. So here's the thing. Call out culture allows marginalized people. This would be somebody who considered this a pro. So it would consider, okay, call out culture allows marginalized people to seek accountability where the justice system fails. So give you an example with like the Me Too movement. Now we all know that ain't how Me Too movement started out. If you don't know, like, trust me, Google it. I'm not even going into that. But essentially what it did was it started ousting people who were taking advantage of their power dynamics in the industry. Now we know that that happens all over the place, but what it looked like was you had people who were victims for some time, and these people continue to go on in these spaces and be able to not be held accountable for the things that they did. So then at some point, Me Too was like, once they kind of, hijacked it, as she did, white women, it's okay, We're not going to that today. And what happened was, obviously, people got canceled, like criminal charges canceled, like 70 years in, like you in jail canceled, like for real. And what I see with that is when people have to go to that extreme to seek accountability, the mechanism that we have put in place to deter that one or hold people accountable and responsible for their actions. Say, for instance, HR departments. Say, for instance, courts, legal system, whatever you want to call it. When those don't necessarily perform the way that we entrusted them to, then it kind of leaves people in a dire situation, which I believe is what took place. So when there was an opportunity to correct the behavior, when there was an opportunity to be responsible and be accountable and then make an atonement for that, it didn't take place because you know how it is. Powerful people got money. They feel like they do what they want to do. Not all of them, but a good amount of them, right? And you know that the people around them are set up to kind of aid them in that. And so when the house of cards comes down, the people that were aiding them in that, they out. And then the person who was really solely a part of, who really performed it, but also had enablers, they don't, they're not held accountable. But the person who did those acts are. So then you have this thing. Now, the other side of that, we're going to go to that is call-out culture amounts to online bullying and can incite violence and threats even worse than the original offense being called out. Yeah. I don't know how we got to a point where we felt so strongly about something that we were willing to go into their private inboxes, DMs or whatever, and or emails and send people threats. Like, huh? I don't understand that, but people have had their lives threatened and things of that nature based on the fact that they've been called out and are in the process of being canceled. So how do you feel about that? Because to me, I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's cool because I'm obviously a person that's anti-violent, prevention methods and things like that. That's not what I'm about. However, I think there's an opportunity for a conversation, and those conversations need to kind of be put into context where people can say what needs to be said. Because what happens is when we get into respectability politics and what is it, the thing the folks over in the other party are saying, where we take people's words and we kind of massage them down. I get it, but it doesn't give us the avenue to say things and how we understand them to be said so that we can have a conversation, because some people really don't have a clue, and some people have a clue and they weaponize it. But we won't know that if we are canceling, threatening people and not having an open dialogue about what is the places and the spaces that actually hold it in place to keep it going. You know what I'm saying? And then the other thing is it kind of puts you in the mind. Like, say, for instance, if it calls it out and it incites violence, it threatens the original offense, and there's no opportunity for any redemption, kind of like the prison industrial complex, ain't it? You know how y'all just be locking up folks and being like, yep, you did something when you was 17, you're going away for the rest of your life. Like, there isn't an opportunity for redemption. Or when you decide, you know what, you want to smoke pot, and that was 20 years ago, and someone lock you up for 20 years. Oh, and by the way, we're going to sell it now. I mean, it was one of them things where it wasn't working for a group of people, obviously, long time ago. And so now that it's kind of affecting a different demographic, like your Harvey Weinsteins and your college coaches who know about things, and the Sandusky's of the world, then it's it's a problem. So that's when it kind of gets, and that's when it's kind of I don't know about that argument, but I think it's valid though, because I don't believe anybody should be threatened or anything else. I think also it gives people the opportunity to be very super morally high roadish, almost to the point of self-indignant righteousness. And we get so far away from how we can actually have a conversation about what we need to talk about that we get into that I'm better than you kind of thing. We're not the same, and we don't ever really have dialogue about it. So y'all tell me what you think about that. I'm curious. Hey, Lourdes. Yeah, people are bold. Yeah, people are bold, and also being able to be bold behind a computer screen in terms of being able to hide your identity and being geographical, um, in a place far away where you can't be touched. It's easy for somebody to be bold, but then it's also quite cowardice too, right? To be able to be that bold, threaten somebody's life, and say all these things, and not be able to stand in what you're saying. Because a lot of the times it's just to kind of join a party of tearing people down for whatever reason. That level of vitriol gets a lot of views. We see it, viral stuff comes out of that. So, people are rewarded for being disrespectful, bold, ignorant, and so on and so forth. So I believe we all have a responsibility in that, and so that's that. For whatever reason, people feeding off of negativity is absolutely essential to the thriving of cancel culture. So, yeah, that's that. Let's go on to another one. Call out culture gives a voice to disenfranchised or less powerful people. It does. It does. It does because, in a time where people didn't necessarily have the ability to get into the proximity of powerful people who make decisions, or you can't necessarily get to them to be able to say, hey, this is an issue, or they're basically not interested in your issue, even if you get close to them. Then, people got to ring the alarm. And in so many instances, it has been, successful with, some collateral damage. I'm not going to deny that. But nonetheless, it has essentially been very, impactful in allowing things that media that are controlled by the dominant culture, let's just call it what it is. That's, to be able to project one thing, but really this is how we live out here in these streets. And these are the things that are really going on. So when social media, being a blessing and a curse that it is, people are like, yeah, well, you know what, let's start a campaign, get this stuff out there. And it's really forcing people who aren't at the tables, who are silenced, usually people of color, specifically Black people, women, to be able to say, okay, so I don't have them power dynamics. I'm telling you what I'm gonna do. And there you have it. And so it kind of, averts us being able to have a conversation, because people are like, listen, we ain't even going that route. You know what I mean? We're going straight to the to the court of public opinion, and we gonna call you out, and we gonna cancel your A. And so, unfortunately, that's what's going on, and it's unfortunate because the people that do have the power to change structural inequality and all these other things, they don't seem to be. They're very disconnected from the public sentiment, and so it has unfortunately, but fortunately, in some cases, forced the public who are in the lower end of that quote unquote power structure. I didn't never want to be one of the people that did this. Air quotes. I didn't want, hey, it is what it is. Maybe I should just say quote, end quote. Maybe we'll try that. But it forces people to basically, you know what I mean? Just be like, all right, well, we're going to take it to this. And I'm going to tell you something. The reason why I evolved, and I'm not necessarily, I'm neutral with it, because truth be told, about me from cancel call out culture. Essentially, the state of Florida would have been really good with burying me under the cells or in a cage for 20 years for something clearly that man, was it GZ? We can't say his name, was able to do something just willy-nilly and wild. So it has its place, right? But then when it's, not the common, because it opened a lot of conversation. Hell, I'm home, thank the Lord. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when you start having instances where people's lives are threatened, or, we already know that's been happening with the other fella there. And, that's the other end of it, when there's no balance, when we're not really having any conversation. And when the conversations we are having, we're not moving the needle because it's so layered, so nuanced, and has such a heavy context around it. But, I think y'all get my point, right? Essentially, the institutions that we're supposed to trust are basically deaf. And so when they were deaf, people was like, oh, okay. Y'all remember that clip long time ago that Pac did, and he did the interview, and he was just talking about, we are hungry, please let us in, and then how that escalated. Essentially, that to me goes into this category, because when people were being civilized and trying to go the routes that you put, is so much arbitration and bureaucracy that things don't get done. And so what social media has done is allowed us to be like banging at the door, please let us in. So that's the kind of way I looked at it when I read this. Just my thoughts on what I be thinking. The other thing is, call out culture is not productive and does not bring about social change. That's debatable. I don't know, because productive is going to be subjective to the person who actually got something done versus the person who actually got called out and canceled. You ain't gonna necessarily feel that way. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have the ability to, let me say this. I think that we have to be careful, because what ends up happening is we don't want to think that the only form of calling something out without putting in the actual work is just to get online, put something out there, and then cuss people out and go back and forth and ruin reputations, because that necessarily does not get the social change that we're looking for. And yet, also, it does get the attention of people so that we can get people in the rooms to have the conversation. And what happens is, without the continued boring meetings, because they are, but necessary, the strategy, the actual organizing to take place, then what you're gonna get is like no true, once the traction is there, it's not going to continue, right? So I think that's where, that could be a problem, where it doesn't bring social change, because we get this hype, we got it going, and then where is the continued effort? Because I can go out there and beat on my drum in front of your building all day long, but it would be much more helpful that if I actually organize in a way where I get people from all over, because we know it's not just central to our location and we are all beating on the same drum. That's essentially what took place with George Floyd, right? Like I was like international. And so what we also seen was this basically banners and things put up to play the whole nine. And that does not necessarily translate into any true social change. We see people get into board positions, Black people, people of color. We've got this person in leadership now. We've ordered this, we put this group together, but those people don't have any true decision-making power. So essentially, you're a token. See, that ain't what we want either. So that's that balancing thing, right? Let's see. The other thing is, call out culture gives a voice to disenfranchised or less powerful people. That kind of just piggybacks on what I just said. If you don't have the ability to stop something through political means, and people and you can get people to refuse to participate in supporting a whatever, then that's what's going to happen. And I think we kind of saw that to some degree when the company was like, oh, shoot, we can't take this risk. Black Lives Matter banner going up, because they know that, at least from the Black economic power, we are a over $2.1 trillion spending machine that really truly keeps it afloat, and really cannot necessarily afford to lose it. So that was what was done. But I would really like that power to continue to organize in a way where it can, really make an impact ongoing. Because the feel good, banners and stuff, that doesn't translate again into any true change. But nonetheless, it does give people the power to actually, get some attention. I think sustainability is where work needs to be done. And in order for sustainability and the organizing effort and the changing of whatever it is we're doing, we have to have ongoing conversations, and it has to be front and center. Like, people got to be sick of it. You know what I mean? Like, it really has to show what it looks like, and it can't be just on PBS. It's got to be on CBS, ABC, Fox. Yes, y'all too. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see here. Call out culture is not productive and does not bring about. Oh, I think I just said that. Let me go back down here a little bit. This is the other one, y'all. Bear with me. Call out culture is simply a new form of boycott and is cherished tactic in the civil rights movement to bring about social change. So what basically that's saying is that is now the new boycott. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think I just went over, like, if it kind of doesn't have any sustainability, then what we doing? If we really can't get any closer to what we're trying to get, then what are we doing? Because with all those things that took place and all that money that went into a lot of these, these things, nobody really is being held accountable for the things that's been taking place. And not even just the people who carried out the actual egregious acts, like the actual cops or anything like that. We're talking about an entire system of something we're trying to reform. Where do you begin with that thing? It's a beast. So we're having conversations. We're trying to elect people to go to the office to represent us. Meanwhile, you got a whole party trying to pull back and do some more voter suppression. You know what I'm saying? And they bold. That's bold. Lourdes, that's bold. But guess what? They don't care because they can do it. That's just kind of what I think about that. Y'all tell me what you think. Let me look at what y'all got. Cyberbullying is what it is. Yeah, it turns into cyberbullying. However, it does have a place in forcing people who have invested power that is completely unbalanced, it forces them to have to do something. And what happens is, I think what we have to be careful about is when it gets into a very unproductive, conversation, or basically not even conversation at that point. We just, at each other's throats and nothing's really being done. And that's kind of what's taking place. And some of this stuff is just trash. Like some of that, relationship stuff and all that goes on with some of that stuff is just trash. So, that's just what it is. You're not going to get it all perfect or whatever you want to call it. But when you're talking about people who actually elevate something because it's being buried, so it's like some kind of investigative report, like, hey, look at what's going on, i.e., the R. Kelly situation. A lot of people feel some kind of way about that. And I ain't gonna lie to you. I get what you're saying, because I think it's important for me to say that I can hold two things to be true or whatever and not feel like it's threatening my identity. I can agree that, his music is his music, and people, he put that into the world, and he's a musical genius, and that I remember a lot of his music and still say, but he should be accountable, and he should be accountable for the decades of harm that he, ensued. And I think what happens is, because first of all, we wasn't able to cancel him out because his music streams went up. Whether or not that's going to translate into money to him, I don't know. But at this point, he's still sitting there. I don't know what the heck is going on with the case. But we really, after the 6-part series, really still ain't had a conversation, about how that stuff even starts. Because what we do know is it started on him when he was a child. This is in no way excusing his behavior, but this is the elevator conversation on what do we want to do about that? How do we want to protect our children so that they don't, turn into later on doing the same thing that was done to them? And you're saying, Marissa, that's happened to other people when they don't do it. You're absolutely right. And that's also a conversation we need to have. When this happened to you, how did you move past it? Did you suppress it? Did you actually heal? What took place? Right? Because that's a conversation. We know people are dealing with it. So that's the R. Kelly thing. I'm gonna jump on that. Goes to trial in September, pushed back because of COVID. Yep, that's gonna be a public nightmare. That's gonna be a circus in that courtroom. So, in conclusion, I'll leave you with this. I think we got to encourage instead of a call out, a call in, so that it leaves us room to encourage growth. On both sides. And I'm not naive to think that there's some people who just clearly do not want to be called into a conversation and don't have any intention on changing their mindset. Okay, cool. I think we should know what that looks like too. I think we should be prepared to say, this is what this looked like. And by the time we have developed this 7-step on 2 and 3, you're going to see we ain't getting nowhere with that. But at least know what it looks like and also the damage that it causes. So we're going to have to do that. And then just an educating culture. I'm amazed every day at some of the stuff I learned. Some of the stuff is really remedial, but some of the stuff is like, wow, I had no idea. And I enjoy learning, but also it, keeps me in check in terms of, first of all, I don't want to be the person. I don't have all the dang on answers. I wish I was the oracle. No, that's got to be hard. Could you imagine having all the answers? You would never get no sleep. You just be like, all right, I digress. But you get my point. So, but I do believe that through education, people are capable of changing. I think people are capable of change if they want to. And I think when we can get an opportunity to encourage it, then we should try to do so. That's what I think. I think it's counterproductive because, sometimes people being called out, this is where the rub is. They feel as though, okay, well, I'm already being called out. I'm on shaky ground. I can't half do anything because it's going to get highlighted and blown to extra proportions. And so what you end up having is you may have somebody who will double down on their decision to do what they did without even, they shut down, or you can't have a conversation. So when the call out, or should I say the call in, the education takes place is really important, because I think that by the time somebody is dragged for filth and completely canceled, you probably got somebody bitter and maybe not so apt to necessarily have the conversation, because their basically self-esteem is eroded. They probably took in a huge loss and now they I don't want to learn. Yeah, just a thought. And so I'll say this lastly, when educating or calling people in, I think it's important that we don't disguise our disapproval in constructive criticism. And what I mean by that is those who are condescending when you're trying to educate, because I've seen a lot of good information, but the tone is condescending and it's not inviting. And that may be subject. Now, for me, I can get past the tone and really look at the content and look at the intent behind the content, because sometimes the intent is to be condescending, but it's still good information. Not everybody's going to do that. So if there's a way in which the message is done in a way where it is inviting, or at least without the judgment and the hateration on it, I think it would be pretty good to say those things and get them out there. I don't know, y'all. That's just my thoughts on it. I think cancel culture is here for a while. I believe that for whatever reason, if certain powers that be in individuals continue their trek on totalitarianism, I think that's going to be dangerous for us. And I think that then at that point we won't have a choice but to really band together and not be so diabolically opposed, because it's not going to serve us and our future, our little people, any good. And I think there's a whole lot more to go about that. And I think it's going to be a whole lot more canceling to come. And I think that there's people who get away with canceling because they're popular, and not necessarily because they haven't done anything. But like everything else, it all comes to an end at some point, and we all kind of, you put that out there, it'll come back, and it is just a law of reciprocity, and it will come to light, and that is where it is most harmful, because it impacts a whole lot more people as opposed to we can just get it on the front end. It's much more reactive as opposed to being proactive, which is why I like prevention. I am 6 minutes over, y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Y'all see my holes in my shirt. My baby was like, "You got holes in your shirt." I was like, "Yeah, no, it's designed that way." But anyway, y'all, thanks for listening to me ramble on about this. We can have more conversation. I'm going to ask more questions about cancel culture, but that's me thinking out loud. Y'all, thank you again for joining me this Wednesday. Peace out.